Welcome to the Hybrid Approach by Cole Howlett. This presentation will be about my response to the New Blood briefs, the Xbox One in particular, the proposal of my vision and what the game's actually about, my Scrum team and their individual approaches towards the response and the development of this character, the strengths and weaknesses of Agile versus Waterfall, points of no return, a critical point into my reasoning into why I need a hybrid approach, the imports from Agile, what aspects have I taken into the hybrid approach and why, then the same for Waterfall, the aspects I brought in and why, then a conclusion to the overall presentation. Next we will have the support slides, which are also attached separately, so they will be on screen for 5 seconds each, but again they are going to be attached separately, and I recommend you have them at hand while we go through the presentation. And then next there'll be a Q&A section where I answer questions that have been put forward by you and other people, followed by a final statement of me on what the hybrid approach is. Enjoy. Good morning and welcome to the D&D's New Blood response based on the Xbox Gaming Challenge. What does the Xbox Gaming Challenge want me to do? They want me to create a game for good, feels good and with a good impact. Now my solution to this and the vision of this project is to create a medical game that allows you to explore a world while learning not about just hero stories in everyday life, but learning medical and useful skills such as first aid, potentially sign language, and how to help people with certain disabilities in your daily life. Going all the way forward to actual medical practice and advanced levels useful by doctors. So do you want to be a doctor? Play this game. Do you want the opportunity to save a friend's life? Play this game. If you want the opportunity to spot someone having a stroke, help someone who can't see, potentially practice and learn sign language, play this game. So, who are you going to be playing as when you play this game? Well, so you'll be playing as Breath, after you've just seen a page about the details of Breath, which will be on slide 2. Now, about Breath. He has literally come to life through the inspiration of one of these hero stories I have mentioned, and he will travel among this world in this game, helping people recognize different things, and he will explore the depths of that range I mentioned earlier, from potential first aid to potential some things a bit more mundane, such as depression, strokes, all the way to advanced medical fields, and this will be quite enticing, because it has the action without the destruction, thus meeting the objective of a good game that feels good with good implications. The good implication being it educates you, the consumer, to be more equipped to deal with tackles of our world. Now, how did he come to be there? Through the agile approach of daily sprints. Well, normally with a sprint approach you do 1 week, but in this time it was a daily sprint with 3 different unique characters designing this with my team, my Scrum team. Now I will pull this over to them to go through their process. Hey yo, I'm Mr. Monday. I focused on the expression of the character, using user stories and representations of other games and what enticed people to a character, what made people love their characters, the ability of expression. Key aspect here, out of all the Spider-Man, the comics, the cartoon, the film, which ones entice the most? Why does the mask adapt for expression? And that's what I have decided to do with the agile approach, using user stories to inspire my design, which you'll see on slide 4. Hello, I'm Mr. Tuesday, the jolly one in the bunch. I focus on bringing our character adaptability, so you can go back, change things if there's any problems or risks. Our character, our design, our management style is ready to face them. like by giving more tools, developing with an inspiration budget to develop all aspects of the character. For example, the plasters on his eyes, they grow back. So he pull it off, fix a wound, and he's on his way. They grow back like shark teeth. So, if you want to see my references and inspiration in why developing tools, not just for the business plan, but for the character itself, please see slide 5. Have a good day. Okay, so I'm Mr. Friday, and I am totally against this whole structure. Like, well, there is no structure. It's get a working product within the day, get a working product within the week, and then repeat and reflect. What is this? You need to plan your product. You need vision. You need scope. You need charts. You need to plan all aspects, finer details. Things take time. We are building the foundation to a game, the character. Like, you don't build a building without cement. You need to plan. What is this style? I think is absolutely ridiculous. Like, no business, as you can see from my references today, realistically uses this agile approach. It doesn't work on scale. We're talking about Xbox here. We're not talking about Celebration Chocolates making their first game. We're talking about Xbox. Xbox is global. Agile doesn't work in big conglomerates, which you'll see from my slide on slide 7 with my references. Welcome back, and I hope you enjoyed my Scrum team. Quite an interesting bunch. Now, they've all had a range of different ideas that have been butting heads quite a bit, and the actual designs of the character have been drastically different. However, I have decided as the manager of this team to allow them to butt heads and allow them all to pursue each character design that they are developing based on their own ideas. Now, why am I doing this? Well, I'm actually doing this because I've been inspired by Bill Gates and how he tackled several issues. By allowing both teams to progress, you get multiple solutions that may work tomorrow, one may make in a few years. So, in the case of Bill Gates, he was presented with an issue of either upgrading the system or redoing the entire thing. Now, redoing the entire thing didn't work in the near future, but it was something he decided to push in the longevity. While the other team, who was developed to upgrade the system, was the team that solution was taken at the time. And well, Bill Gates is one of the most successful people on the planet, and I want to be successful with this project, and that's why I've been inspired using the agile approach. Now we'll be moving on to more in-depth analysis of my management style and my hybrid approach using both agile and waterfall. The hybrid approach. Why am I taking the aspects of both agile and waterfall and bringing them together? Because both management styles have key aspects critical for developing a game and to be successful. Now, for the strengths and the weaknesses of the waterfall approach, well, the key ones as far as my project is concerned is the vision and the planning. Why are these important? Because I need to manage points of no return. Point of no return, for example, when the database connects with the main system and the choices that entails. Do I use Unreal Engine 5 or do I use another foundation? Once you've made these decisions and brought that together, trying to go back creates a lot of issues. So once you've actually crossed them lines, you can't go back unless you're rich. Which is why I'm using the waterfall approach. I need the vision of my game to be able to get feedback from potential customers, but I also need the key and ahead of time planning to deal with them large risks on the table. While with the agile approach, the strengths and the weaknesses, it's about adaptability. Using what customers say to adapt my product. For example, my character, I've used sprints to create a range of different characters, different designs, different personality aspects. And then I get the user feedback, the user stories, if you will. And then I can adapt my character. The same way the movie Sonic did. They created the character, no one liked it, they changed it, took 6 months, it was quite costly, but fundamentally it made the product successful by being adaptable. But also, they met their goals and all the steps proved waterfall. So I'm building a world, building a game, so I want the best of both. I want the waterfall strength and I want the agile strength, and I want to bring them together. Points of no return. What is this? During the planning or the development of a game, or potentially other aspects, you have points of no return, where once you have crossed that line during the planning or development stage, if you choose to go back, it could be very costly and very time consuming. For example, for me in this planning stage, I need to pick the engine that this game will use before I pitch it to my client. Or to work with the client, which engine can I use? The reason being, if I was to pick an engine such as Unreal Engine 5, that gives me the options that the environment, I can work with it. My character can work with the environment. It can climb, it can open area. It really decides how limiting or unlimiting I can go with my character. So if I pick an engine, do 3 months worth of sprints and other adaptability as I go along using the agile approach, but then decided, no, I want to use Flash, suddenly the limitations and possibilities drastically change. There's no way of going about that. So suddenly 3 months worth of work could be out the window, which could be very costly and very time consuming. Now this is mainly based on my own personal experience, but to give you a reference for this, in the FBI case study, why the two waterfall approaches failed initially, because they developed the work and then they kept wanting to change things and go back, which is why them approaches fundamentally failed. Now, if we look at the FBI case study and an aspect where if I was to learn this planning approach and things I need to learn, would be a deeper look at why the agile approach worked for the FBI. Because databases, when integrating the system, do have a point of no return. But the agile approach managed to accomplish the goal in less time, successfully, and for less money. So in the future, with my planning approach, would look deeper in how agile can adapt to points of no return. So maybe a hypocritical there, but from my own personal experience and knowledge at the moment, points of no return, like I explained, do not have a way to realistically go back without a high budget. While there are evidence there as to how that can potentially be the case, like in the FBI case study. So that's aspects what I can learn in the future. Just popping back in as an example of how I could use the agile approach to potentially account for that issue that I mentioned. If you designed the coding from scratch and had a database and a system completely independent of the last possible moment, you could be quite adaptable with them two aspects. That's just an example idea of my own personal experience and how that could be accomplished. Agile. Now, what aspect of my planning uses the agile approach? Well, one, the daily stand-ups with my team Monday, Tuesday and Friday, what they will be doing, what they need to do, and potentially removing roadblocks for each individual member. Additionally, I would be doing potentially daily and weekly sprints in all design aspects of the game, from the character, building brick by brick, the actual world design, the colour scheme, tone, all aspects of the design process will be designed to be adaptable. If there's an aspect, oh, don't like that, we want this instead, oh, we can do this, try this. Potentially, if there's an argument, I'll go with both. That's aspects that will use the adaptability. Again, like I mentioned earlier with Bill Gates, you had two people fighting against each other, and then decided to let both go, one to add, one to redo. And I will be including all aspects like this in my planning style, especially with the design. And that will be very critical. So, okay, when I'm going through the hero stories, putting my scripts and how my character will travel through this world, agile, the design of my character, the design of my world, keep on bringing in more user stories. The more I curate, the more feedback I can get, potentially even creating a board game to represent the game, to actually get a live experience for my potential customer and client. Again, all using the agile approach, all being very adaptable and changing on the waterfall approach. What aspects from the traditional waterfall approach will I take? 1, the vision, and 2, the planning. What aspect with the planning and risk assessment will be focused on the points of no return. As you can see on the Gantt chart behind me, we have incorporated them for all the sprints and aspects of the agile approach. However, we have these black lines cutting right through it, which represent these points of no return, such as picking the engine, or potentially, do we want the app to be on a phone? Do we want it to be on a console? Do we want it on a PC? Because that will cement the limitations of where our character can go. And them limitations are tied to that point of no return. Other aspects of the waterfall approach is the vision. The end product, which you saw in the first initial bit of this presentation, with hero stories, no destruction, a game for good, very unique character coming forward, going through this world, helping the world, and teaching you, the consumer and player of this game, medical features. And that's a great big vision for this game, but the finer details, that's all in flux with the agile approach. And that's how I bring in the agile and the waterfall together for my hybrid approach. In conclusion, today you have learned how I have used the hybrid approach in the development and planning of this game with the character Breath. You've also learned about Breath and the uniqueness of Breath and what I seek to accomplish with this game. You've also learned about things I need to learn in development of my understanding of learning strategies, of planning strategies, just as more depth into agile and how it can deal with the hard risks and points of no return in planning, which waterfall is more ideal dealing with, but agile does have a strong track record. So that's where I need to develop. Furthermore, you've learned how I'm going to apply my skills using agile with all the design aspects and using the traditional planning to deal with the hard risk points, such as the points of no return from my personal experience. So I'm reusing my skills in that sense. Additionally, you've also met my Scrum team who have gone through the different processes of actually designing the character, from expression to strict planning to the toolkit. Now, I would also like to go through the slides that will be there. So on slide 1, we will be going through like a poster of the actual game, like an actual design poster to advertise it. Slide 2, you will have a full in-depth analysis of the current design for Breath and all the aspects of Breath, which makes it perfect for this game. And then on slide 3, you will have my initial bibliography. So that will be everything that's been mentioned during this presentation, whether it's been me saying it or on the points behind. 4, the 4 PowerPoint, well, that belongs to Mr. Monday. 5, that belongs to Tuesday. Now, slide 6 will be a budget plan. How and what will I expect to actually fund this using the funding sheets, which will be on slide 6. Now, on slide 7, that belongs to Mr. Sunday. And on slide 8, you will have my second bibliography, things that I haven't mentioned, but they have inspired me to develop this game and how I've taken it forward for this presentation, and they are very good reads. And for slide 9, you'll have a simple bye-bye from me to enjoy your day. After you've watched the slides, which will be in 5-second segments after I finish speaking, after which there will be a Q&A section where I answer questions put to me from you.
Welcome to the Q&A aspect of this presentation, where I will go through 4 key questions that have been presented to me in relation to this presentation and how they will inform you about more of the issues more clearly define aspects, and even talk about the future. Now, the first question is, can you define your hybrid specifically not in relation to Agile and Waterfall? Well, yes, I can, and I did briefly go over that in the slide, but that was a background thing, not me actually going specifically, okay, this is hybrid, instead of bringing in the aspects of Agile and Waterfall, which I was to focus. So, the hybrid approach is about seeing the intent of the future. Something similar, I would say, to Spider-Man's Spider Sense. It doesn't see the future, but it does predict when risks come at him from any direction. So effectively seeing the intent of the future and adapting to it. So this would be like the points of no return. At the beginning of the project, I need to make these choices that apply great limitations to my project and what can be done and what can't be done. Now I know this choice has to be made at some point, and obviously that would affect all the sprints and potentially create new sprints that could possibly be done. So in terms of the Gantt chart, which you saw I had in black lines, so I make the choice early by attempting to see the future by placing them choices at key intervals. Now them choices, I'm seeing the intent, so what am I most likely going to do at that point when I make that choice, potentially me and the client? So with Xbox, I know the most commonly used engine is Unreal Engine 5, and then the second one would be Unity. So I will look at both them engines and the aspects which are similar, and then do a list of the limitations for each one. So then I can move forward based on that information before that choice is made. So that choice would be the intent, and me adapting ahead of time would be, well, reacting to it. So that brings in both aspects. So yeah, it has the strong vision to be able to deal with risk and intent of the future, but also is adaptable for all other aspects of opinions, limitation changes, new dependencies, making it so there isn't any dependencies, and so forth. I think that answers the question. Without using Agile and Waterfall to answer the question, I think that's the best I can do, because fundamentally the hybrid approach is importing Agile and Waterfall to adapt to the intent of the future. So moving on to question 2, can you go into more detail about your Scrum team? Okay, yeah, there is a clear divide. Like Monday and Tuesday use the Agile approach. So it's about, okay, let's just go. Do a little bit of research, get the information with the user stories, and just go and design. With one focusing on expression and the other focusing on the toolkit and a potential reference to inspiration budgets and how companies can be agile despite being large. Now, Mr. Friday doesn't really like the agile approach because he's more about finite details. Like, he needs to know the engine. He needs to know how's this character going to move. Does this character need trainers to run? Is he going to be climbing through pipes? All these like finite details include like the sign language. Obviously, sign language is a real thing. You can't adapt sign language, make your own. No, you have to use the actual real sign language. Otherwise, the game will be useless. You have to learn medical practices. What must the character have to teach them practices? How would a character teach first aid? How would a game become enjoyable? All these questions is what Friday will be using and slowly working through the finite details. So he realistically wouldn't have a final character for months, because obviously he has to do all the heavy research of the medical industry, initial basics, sign language, and other complicated aspects, and really go into that deep and what they equal before designing the character, while the other ones are just designing the character and then using the character to face these problems as they go, sort of treating them as an unknown. So that's the compromise between Agile and Waterfall. So like the Waterfall approach, you want them finite details, it needs to fit the goal. But at the end, potentially, maybe he's not a good character, maybe he isn't fun. A key aspect of gaming is it's got to be fun. So the Agile approach is designing these two characters, which are building up. But both approaches are very much useful. So by having both go at the same time, multiple characters being developed based on expression in the toolkit, and viable products to go forward, but then you have the Friday working on a more finite detail for all key aspects. So then later on in the project, say early December, or well, it's December now, but say another 3 weeks, you'll have a range of different character designs, like potentially 6 to 8 different designs from Monday and Tuesday. And then you'll have one really in-depth design from Friday, and then there could be more agile sprints based on incorporating that for the best character that is possible. Okay, what points of no return will I have in the future? Well, the first one is picking the engine. Well, technically the first one's picking the actual app, or app or game. Do I want to support it with board games and so forth? But that aspect's already been picked. I've decided it's going to be a PC game because I feel like that's the most beneficial. It gives you the most screen space, and it's not limited by hardware, and it doesn't necessarily have the competitive nature of a console versus another console. And Xbox is perfect for this because they are very much cross-platform. So whether it's on PC, it can still be on Xbox. While PlayStation, that probably wouldn't be on the list at all. But then another key aspect that needs to be decided is the engine. At the moment, I'm basing it on Unreal Engine 5, but potentially I do need to actually look at Unity and CryEngine. And Amazon has their own one now, Lumberyard. I have to check that. And I'm going to address this again by having black bars in my Gantt chart on what the intent of these choices will be. And again, so that will be feeding into the Gantt charts and all the choices to come as the intent. This is looking like the intent of the risks in the future. Well, not necessarily risks, but choices, and how that will affect all the sprints. Yeah. Okay, what have I learned so far on the project? So far, I've learned a lot about Agile and more about Waterfall. Like, very much in the past, I very much know more about Waterfall approach than Agile. But learning about Agile is very good, very adaptable, which is key. There's more for me to learn. Like, again, I'm referenced by a case study again, which doesn't necessarily go into specifics of how Agile actually succeeded. It goes more into about how Waterfall failed, and that Agile did succeed. So I need to look more into that, more cases about how Agile has been successful in complicated, big scopes. Fundamentally, it's a new approach, and it's not necessarily out there too much. But Apple is a key case, and with Steve Jobs. So yeah, like I've learned how to use Gantt charts. So I developed my own unique Gantt chart to effectively run with both Agile and Waterfall together. What I've done effectively with that is I created a independent Agile chart ruling, which incorporates all like a morning, midday, afternoon, which then can be transferred to a weekly basis, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever, with the sprint process, which is quite linear, but that's also applied to individual sprints, which is quite adaptable. So the sprint's designed to be adaptable while also being linear. So it's easy for me to get a random team of 7 who have no idea what Agile even is, and funnel them through this Agile approach, which is the benefit of the hybrid approach. We're using both aspects from the waterfall, which people are familiar with, and the strengths of the adaptability, and bringing that forward. Additionally, I've learned a lot about the waterfall, Scrum meetings, and removing roadblocks, being adaptable, Gantt charts, several case studies, working in a team with the Agile approach, and the Scrum Master, and Product Owner, and so forth. One thing that I haven't really addressed in this hybrid approach is the aspect of the client. Because obviously in this DNA debrief, it is a competition fundamentally. I don't have the access to a client necessarily to really dive into that. Like the waterfall, the client doesn't have much. They're there at the beginning and they're there at the end. While with Agile, they're there along the way. With my hybrid approach, ideally, I would probably like to have some communication. So like if I want to be able to ask the client a question, that would be there, like regular intervals. And yeah, so, well, my time's up for question and answers. If you do wish to keep getting in contact with me for more questions, my email will be on the screen, which will run for the next week in terms of this presentation.